Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight for part two of our three-part series with Dr. Ross Greene. Um, I'm Jen from the Connecticut Parent Advocacy Center, and if you're not familiar with us, we are Connecticut's Parent Training Information Center, and we are a nonprofit organization that provides free information, support, and training regarding special education to families and professionals. And we're doing this series as part of a special project with our statewide family engagement center, the Connecticut Family School Partnerships. And for those of you who are not here for our first session, I'm just going to do another brief introduction of our speaker tonight. Ross Greene is a clinical psychologist and originator of the evidence-based approach called Collaborative and Proactive Solutions, or CPS, as described in his influential books, The Explosive Child, Lost at School, Lost and Found, and Raising Human Beings, and the soon to be released The Kids Who Aren't Okay, The Urgent Case for Reimagining Support, Belonging, and Hope in Schools. Dr. Greene was on the faculty at Harvard Medical School for over 20 years and now oversees the nonprofit he founded in 2009, Lives in the Balance, which advocates on behalf of kids with concerning behaviors and their caregivers and provides vast free resources on the CPS model. Dr. Greene has worked with several thousand kids with concerning behaviors and their caregivers, and he and his colleagues have overseen implementation and evaluation of the CPS model in countless schools, inpatient psychiatric units, and residential and juvenile detention facilities with dramatic effect, significant reductions in recidivism, discipline referrals, detentions, suspensions, and the use of restraint and seclusion. Thank you so much for joining us again, Dr. Greene.
My pleasure. Good evening, everybody. It's time for session number two. I hope you were able to join us for session number one, but just in case you couldn't, let's do a quick review. You know that in this model, you aren't focused on a kid's concerning behavior and trying to modify it. The concerning behavior is just the kid's frustration response, the distress response. What you're instead focused on is what's causing the distress response, an expectation the kid is having difficulty reliably meeting. That's true at home, that's true at school, and that's not just kids. We all look bad when there's an expectation we're having difficulty reliably meeting. Some of us look worse than others. Let me put that a different way. Some people have bigger, less adaptive frustration responses than others. Last time you heard me refer to those big frustration responses, screaming, swearing, hitting, spitting, kicking, biting, throwing, destroying, running, as unlucky. There are other frustration responses, whining, pouting, sulking, withdrawing, crying, that I call lucky. The difference between lucky and unlucky frustration responses mostly relates to how we treat them. Those kids with lucky frustration responses tend to be met with empathy, nurturance, and support. Those with unlucky frustration responses tend to be greeted with the most punitive, exclusionary discipline our society has to offer. But as it relates to what the frustration responses are communicating, all frustration responses are created equal. They're all communicating that there's an expectation a kid is having difficulty reliably meeting. And those unsolved problems, once again, as we call them, tend to be old. These are expectations the kid has been having difficulty meeting for a very long time. This is not the first time the kid has had difficulty brushing their teeth before going to bed at night, if you're a parent. This is not the first time the kid has had difficulty coming back into the classroom after recess, if you're an educator. Those are old unsolved problems. That tells us a few things. A, they're predictable. maybe whatever we've done so far hasn't solved those problems. So last week, I asked you to create a list of every expectation the child you're thinking about, whether it's your child at home or a student in your classroom, every expectation your child, that child, is having difficulty reliably meeting. And hopefully you noticed that your list was, well, I don't know if I hope this or not. Most people who want my help have kids who have a lot of unsolved problems. It's not just that they have unlucky frustration responses, is that they have a lot of unsolved problems that they are responding unluckily to. It's a double whammy. Um, but now you've got your list. And as you heard me say last time, just having the list um, helps you be proactive, helps you decide what you're working on first, and helps you make this massive shift from focusing on a kid's behavior, their frustration responses, to the problems that are causing them. That is huge. So I'm going to assume that if you're a parent, you had things on your list because we don't have time to poll everybody. I'm suspecting homework could have made it on there. Hygiene in some way, shape, or form made it on there. Things related to screens made it on there. Sometimes things related to food makes it on there. Um, Getting to bed on time, waking up to get ready for school on time. These are the prototypical unsolved problems at home that can cause concerning behavior in kids who are prone to concerning behavior. At school, you may have had things on there like difficulty completing the double-digit division problems on the worksheet in math, difficulty sitting next to Susie during circle time, difficulty agreeing with Billy on the rules of the Foursquare game at recess, difficulty coming to school, difficulty coming to school on time. As always, I could go on forever, but that's just a partial listing, sampling of the unsolved problems that can give rise to concerning behavior at school. Frustration responses at school. Now, you may remember last week I said non-compliance is good. And once again, out of context, that makes no sense. How could non-compliance be good? Non-compliance and every other concerning behavior tells you that there's an expectation that a kid is having difficulty meeting. And as I always say, you want to know that, right? Non-compliance is also informative if we take the time to do the two things that are on the screen right now. Figure out what the kids' unsolved problems are. You all have taken, if you did your homework, you've taken 10 giant leaps forward and learn how to solve those problems collaboratively and proactively. And that's all we're covering today. Next slide, please. Why are we identifying unsolved problems? Because that's what's going to make intervention proactive rather than reactive. If we don't identify unsolved problems proactively, we won't be able to solve them proactively. And that means we're always going to find ourselves in the heat of the moment, yet again, dealing with a kid's frustration response. Now, something I might have given short shrift to last time is skills. I'm sure I told you that for a long time we've been led to believe that kids' concerning behavior was due to poor motivation. And if we believe it's poor motivation, then applying motivational strategies would make perfect sense. But poor motivation is not what the research has been telling us for quite some time about why some kids have maladaptive frustration responses. What the research tells us is that they're struggling with certain skills. And now, rewarding and punishing doesn't really make any sense anymore. They're struggling with skills like flexibility, adaptability, frustration tolerance, problem solving, emotion regulation. And as it says up on the screen, that is a much more compassionate, much more accurate, much more productive set of lenses. Next slide, please. Why are we solving problems collaboratively and proactively? Because when you're solving problems collaboratively with a kid, you and the kid are partners, teammates. You are not enemies. You are not adversaries. Way better. Um, there is absolutely no downside to engaging kids in solving the problems that are affecting their lives. In fact, I'm always asking the question, why would you want to leave the kid out of the loop on that? Solving problems collaboratively and proactively tends to help us come to solutions that are a whole lot more effective and a whole lot more durable than the ones we adults come up with all on our own. And as you've already heard me say, when you're solving problems collaboratively and proactively with kids, you're not just solving problems. You're not just getting rid of the frustration responses that are being caused by those problems. You are enhancing communication with the kid. You are enhancing your relationship with the kid. And here's the icing on the cake. You are simultaneously, not through a curriculum, not through direct instruction, but through the mere process of solving problems collaboratively and proactively, your child's skills are being enhanced. It's a 5-for-1 sale. I'll take it. Next slide, please. This is more important usually at school than it is at home, but there's absolutely no reason that those of you at home should not use this instrument. This is the assessment of skills and unsolved problems, or what I call ASIP. It consists of two sections. The first section contains a list. The slides are available to you all. I think you'll be receiving them from our hosts. They have my permission to share all the slides with you. So if you're furiously taking notes and writing down things that are on the slide, you don't need to do that if you don't want to. The ASIP has two sections. The top section is skills. There you will find a list of 16 skills, frequently that kids with concerning behaviors tend to struggle with. That is not an exhaustive list of skills. It's a representative list of skills. If I had tried to be exhaustive about all the skills kids with concerning behaviors tend to struggle with, the ASIP would be 5 pages long. But you're not identifying the skills so that you know which skills to teach through direct instruction, because you're not teaching the skills through direct instruction. You're identifying the skills so that you have the right lenses on. Skills, not motivation. That's a big deal. The bottom section is even more important. That's where you are identifying every single expectation your kid or your student is having difficulty reliably meeting. Once again, even if they can meet the expectations sometimes and not others, it still counts as an unsolved problem. But that's where you're going to be writing in or typing in, because the ASIP is available, on the Lives in the Balance website in an editable, fillable format so that you can type instead of write and save and share electronically every single expectation the kid is having difficulty reliably meeting. Now, in practical terms, if I've got a kid that I'm working with who's struggling at home and school, I'm doing a separate ASIP for home and a separate ASIP for school. If I'm working with a kid who's only having difficulty at home, I'm doing an ASIP for home. If I'm working with a kid who's only having difficulty at school, I'm doing an ASIP only for school. And in the you can't see it on the screen really, but um, down in the unsolved problem section, there's there's prompts to help you write unsolved problems. Some prompts make more sense for home and for school and treatment facilities. Those are the ones on the left. Some are more appropriate for home and clinic. Those are on the right. We don't have time for me to teach you how to use the ASIP. What I am going to tell you is that you can find a 30-minute video on the Lives in the Balance website teaching you how to use this instrument. It looks self-explanatory. It's not that self-explanatory. Um, Watch the 30-minute video, then do the ASIP. For real. The 30-minute video is going to help you out a lot, especially when it comes to wording the unsolved problems. But this instrument is assessment gold. If you're an educator, this is going to write your functional behavior assessment for you. I would do the ASIP before I would do a functional behavior assessment. If you do the ASIP, you might not need to do the FBA. If you have to do the FBA, the ASIP is going to write the FBA for you. It's going to write your IEP for you. It's going to write your behavior plan for you. Do the ASIP first. Do the ASIP often before you refer the kid for testing. Um, Trying to save time here. Takes about 30 to 45 minutes to identify a kid's skills and unsolved problems. And that's the most important information of all. I have empathy for those of you who are educators. I have empathy for those of you who are parents too, but I have empathy for educators for one particular reason. No profession has more initiatives thrown at it than educators. And as I said to a group in Connecticut, a group of educators in mid-December, all those initiatives have caused y'all to get all bunged up. They've clogged you up. I wouldn't know what to do if I was an educator because of all the things I got to think about, especially with kids who are struggling with behavior. It's a long list of what we've been throwing at educators for a very long time. How do we get unbunged? The assessment of skills and unsolved problems. It helps us focus on the two most critical pieces of information we need to have about this kid to really start helping. Skills, so we don't think that this kid is unmotivated, and so that we know the kid is struggling with skills, and even more important than that, we need the list. We need the list of unsolved problems. Critical. Otherwise, we're going to find ourselves focused on the kid's behavior every time. That's late. Watch that 30-minute video. It's going to help you a lot, but we're going to move on. I'm just letting you know, this is assessment gold. Assessment gold. Next slide, please. I might skip a few here because I might have included. Yeah. What you want to watch the video for in particular is how to word the unsolved problems. Because the wording of the unsolved problem on the ASIP is going to translate directly into how you word the unsolved problem for the kid when y'all are sitting down proactively to solve it together. And poorly worded unsolved problems often cause the entire problem solving process to come to a dead stop before it even gets started. We call that failure to launch, all because of how we worded the unsolved problem. So, next slide, please. You're going to learn this in the video, and then I'm going to start skipping some slides. There are 4 guidelines for the wording of unsolved problems, just to give you a heads up about what you're going to learn in the video. The wording of unsolved problems contains no concerning behaviors, because you're not talking with kids about their concerning behavior in this model. You try talking with a kid about their concerning behavior, they're going to think they're in trouble, they're going to become defensive, and they're not going to talk to you. Isn't it amazing that that's what we often spend our time talking with kids about? It's the wrong way to get the conversation started. There's no adult theories in the wording of the unsolved problem. You don't need to know why the kid is having difficulty meeting the expectation. You're going to find out when you start solving the problem collaboratively and proactively. Your number one source of information on what's making it hard for a kid to meet a particular expectation in this model is the kid. And as I may have said last week, I frequently get asked the question, what makes you think the kid knows? And as you may have heard me say last week, my answer is 35 years of asking. The wording of the unsolved problem is split, not clumped, which is really kind of another way of saying you want the wording to be as specific as possible. And you'll learn about all of that in the video. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. I'm skipping in the interest of time. I never know how long I'm going to have. Next slide, please. All of this is in the video. I promise you're not missing anything. Next slide, please. And next slide, please. Once you identify a kid's unsolved problems, there's likely to be a lot. As I mentioned earlier, you may have found that when you made your list of unsolved problems. Probably a lot. And you're not going to be able to solve them all at once. If you try solving them all at once, you're going to end up solving none at all. So we have to prioritize. You're never going to be working on more than 3 unsolved problems, each separately, at any point in time. Never more than 3. If you're working on more than 3, you're working on too many, and you're going to get diminishing returns. 3 maximum. How do you pick the 3? Here's your algorithm. Now, and by the way, I should mention, while it's great for parents to do an ASIP on their own, in a school, it's better done by committee. We call that an ASIP meeting. It's where everybody who works with the kid gathers together to identify skills and unsolved problems. It's a very good way to get everybody on the same page, to get everybody talking the same language, and to help the group prioritize what they're working on first. Otherwise, every teacher the kid has is going to be working on something different, and now we're working on too much again. Never more than 3. So the group gets to decide which 3. Here's your algorithm. Safety first. Any unsolved problem setting in motion safety issues is your top priority. As I don't have to tell the state of Connecticut, safety in schools is a big deal. Safety first. If none of the unsolved problems are causing safety issues, we're either going to go with frequency, the unsolved problems that are occurring the most, or gravity, the unsolved problems having the greatest negative impact on the kid's life or the lives of others. You get to pick three. Next slide, please. How are you keeping track? Whoops, I left it out. There's another instrument. How did I leave that out? Called the problem solving plan, also available on the Lives in the Balance website in an editable, fillable format to help you keep track of the unsolved problems you're working on with a kid right now and your progress in solving those problems. Once a problem is solved, it comes off the problem solving plan and another one arrives from the assessment of skills and unsolved problems to take its place. Very good way of keeping track. Now, those of you who are educators might be wondering, wait a minute, are we going to do an ASIP on every kid in the building? Absolutely not. You're going to use the ASIP for the 10 to 15 kids in your building who are struggling the most, who are getting in trouble the most, who are accessing the school discipline program the most. Those kids need an ASIP. ASAP. Those are the kids we're in the midst of losing. Those are the kids who cause teachers to leave the profession. Those are the kids the parents of the well-behaved kids are complaining about the most. Those are the kids. I was listening to the Commissioner of Education in the state of South Dakota today because I was asked to educate some of their legislators on legislation that they're trying to pass in South Dakota to make it easier for schools to toss kids who have concerning behaviors. Get rid of them. I hope the Commissioner of Education is on that call because I'd like to set him straight. I get it. There's a lot more of these kids than there were, and their concerning behavior is worse than it was. That calls for new interventions than the ones we're using now. It does not call for getting rid of kids, especially if those kids can be saved. I get it. I get why getting rid of them would be appealing. By my way of thinking, it makes no sense whatsoever. These kids can be okay, but not if we're doing what we've always done. That's a big part of why they're not doing okay in the first place. And it's a big part of how we're still training people. Um, what do I think people should be trained in? The ASIP and Plan B. So here we go. You know you have a 30-minute video waiting for you on the Lives in the Balance website so you can learn how to use the ASIP. Then start rocking with the ASIP. It's going to save you a lot of time. And it is worth the logistical hurdles. I know how hard it is in a school to get everybody in on a meeting about the same kid. It is worth the logistical hurdles to get everybody in on the meeting for those 10 to 15 kids. You don't need the ASIP for every kid in the building, but you need it badly for the kids we are in the midst of losing. And now we've arrived at part 2 of the day today. What are we going to do with those unsolved problems? How are we going to handle them? Here we go. You have 3 options. They are called, this is at home, at school, everywhere. They are called Plan A, Plan B, and Plan C. What I've done here is I've taken the many different ways in which adults respond to unsolved problems, unmet expectations, and I've reduced them to 3 basic options. A, B, C. It provides a very nice shorthand for thinking about how we are currently handling unsolved problems and for also thinking about how we might much more productively handle them instead. ABC. Notice unsolved is underlined at the top. That's because if a problem isn't unsolved, you don't need one of these plans. It's not an unsolved problem, it's a met expectation. So if a kid is turning off the Xbox to come in for dinner, as well and as often as you'd like them to at home, you don't need one of these plans. It's not an unsolved problem, it's a met expectation. If kid is um, coming in the classroom after recess as well and as often as you'd like them to, you don't need a plan. It's not an unsolved problem. It's a met expectation. No plan needed. But if there's any expectation a kid is having difficulty reliably meeting, you need a plan. And you have three options: Plan A, Plan B, Plan C. Plan A is where you're solving the problem unilaterally. That's where the adult divines what's getting in the way of the kid meeting the expectation, and the adult divines and imposes a solution, often accompanied by a sprinkling of adult imposed consequences to give the kid the incentive to meet the expectation. But a very important theme you heard last week: kids do well if they can. If the kid could do well, they would do well. The kid doesn't need more incentive to meet the expectation. And it is far more productive to engage kids in solving those problems alongside you. That's plan B. That's where you're solving the problem collaboratively. Same problem, completely different approach to getting it solved. And then finally, but not because it's unimportant, plan C. Plan C is where you are putting a particular expectation on hold, at least for now. Now, why would you do that? Next slide, please. You would do that for one of three reasons. Oops, we're not there yet. Wait a minute. Yeah, here we go. I can think of three reasons you'd want to put an expectation on hold for now. Reason number one: if this kid has a lot of unsolved problems and you're not going to be able to solve them all at once, some of them you're going to be solving, no more than three. The rest, are going to be put on hold for now because you can't solve everything at once. Now, this is interesting. I think prioritizing is best practice. You know what? If I showed up at the emergency room and I had a dislocated shoulder, an ingrown toenail, and was in cardiac arrest, I sure do hope they prioritize. Otherwise, they're going to end up working on something that doesn't really matter. Schools got to prioritize. Otherwise, they're going to end up working on everything at once. Parents need to prioritize. Otherwise, you're going to end up working on everything at once. The synonym for prioritizing is triaging. Got to triage, especially if your kid has more than three unsolved problems. There's another reason we'd want to prioritize, that we'd want to put an expectation. Oh, by the way, how do I help caregivers feel better about prioritizing? Even though I think it's best practice to prioritize, a lot of adults get kind of queasy about the idea of putting an expectation on hold for now. Here's what I remind them: the kid isn't meeting the expectation anyway. I'll repeat that. The kid isn't meeting the expectation anyway. So now you have two options. Keep putting the expectation on the kid that they're not meeting, cause concerning behavior, frustration responses, and all that goes along with it, or make it official. Kid, we don't expect you to meet this expectation, at least for the time being. That's not giving in. That's not giving up. That's prioritizing. Because you can't work on everything at once, and because the kid isn't meeting the expectation anyway. Are you selling the kid short? No. You're meeting the kid where they're at. Huge. Another reason you'd want to put the expectation on hold for now is something we call expectation management. This is huge. I don't talk about it enough, but it's huge. Expectation management means don't, simply put, don't put expectations on a kid you already know they can't meet. First of all, why would we do that? Um, I fervently believe that if we were managing our expectations better, we would be managing behavior far less. How do you know if the kid can meet the expectation? Judgment call. Judgment call. But I have a simple and imperfect algorithm for you. If a kid can sometimes meet an expectation, it's probably in range at this point in this kid's development. If a kid is never meeting an expectation, I feel like you're probably pretty safe in believing that it's probably out of reach at this point in this kid's development. And since you're prioritizing anyways, you probably have bigger fish to fry. There's my simple but imperfect algorithm. Expectation management is huge. Thanks in schools in particular to high stakes testing. And because we don't want to sell anybody short. We haven't been practicing expectation management frequently. We've been putting expectations on kids we already know they can't meet, causing concerning behavior, frustration responses, and all that goes along with it. When you really think about it, that makes no sense. The third reason you would put expectations on hold for now is stabilization. Um, some kids are so volatile, so reactive, so unstable, at least at this moment. Um, we need to be in expectation reduction mode. Um, in schools, my mantra is stabilization comes before education. You're not going to get academics done until this kid is stable. And you don't want to put expectations on the kid that only destabilize the kid further. That's shooting ourselves in the foot. In families, sometimes parents get my speech. I sometimes say to parents, conflict is the absolute worst thing going on in your family right now. And that conflict is over expectations your kid probably isn't meeting anyways. We have got to lower the flame. Um, we have got to get stability to your family before we can start working on unsolved problems. Because under these circumstances, y'all aren't even talking to each other. The fighting is too much. One very good way to stabilize a family is to temporarily, dramatically reduce expectations. Huge. Next slide, please. I want to talk about Plan A for a few minutes, just so you know why I wouldn't recommend it. Then we'll talk about Plan B. Then we'll go into detail about Plan B next time. You're going to get the basics today. Let's focus on Plan A a little first, just so I can tell you why I wouldn't use it. Plan A, as you already know, is where the adult is deciding what the solution is, um, and imposing it on the kid. How do you know you're using plan A? The following words are usually the dead giveaway in one form or another. I've decided that. Now, don't get confused. Not, I've decided that I have this expectation for you. That's just having an expectation. That's not plan A, but rather, I've decided that this is the solution to the expectation you're having difficulty meeting. Let me give you some examples to make sure that's clear. Because you're having difficulty completing your homework when you get home from school, no plan yet, just an expectation. Apparently, the parent's expectation is that the kid complete the homework when they get home from school. I've decided, here comes plan A, you're not going out to play until your homework is done. That part was plan A. One part was the expectation. The other part, the plan A part, was the imposed solution. Here's a school example. Because you're having difficulty agreeing with Billy on the rules of the Foursquare game at recess, no plan yet. Not A, B, or C, just an expectation. Apparently, the expectation is that these two guys agree with each other on the rules of the Foursquare game at recess. I've decided, here comes plan A, y'all aren't going out for recess until I decide you can again. That was plan A. Now, what's the downside of solving problems that way? Oh my goodness, I can think of so many. I'm only going to cover four. Here's a big one. Plan A causes concerning behavior in kids who are prone to concerning behavior. I'm going to repeat that just for emphasis because here I thought we were trying to reduce concerning behavior. Plan A causes concerning behavior in kids who are prone to concerning behavior. You might be wondering why, what just happened? You just threw plan A at a kid who doesn't have the skills to handle plan A. What does that mean? The kid doesn't have the skills to handle plan A. None of us loves having other people impose their will on us. On those, believe it or not, relatively rare occasions that it actually happens in the real world, most of us have the skills to handle it. Kids with concerning behaviors don't. What skills? You'll find a bunch of them listed in the skills section on the assessment of skills and unsolved problems. You throw plan A at a kid who doesn't have the skills to handle plan A, they will communicate that they don't have the skills to handle plan A through their concerning behavior. Now, an interesting paradox. Who gets more plan A thrown at them than any other type of kid? Hmm. The ones with concerning behaviors, the ones least equipped to handle it well. Many people say to me, but Ross, isn't it a plan A world? Don't we need to get the kid ready for the plan A world? I don't think it's a plan A world. I think it's a world filled with expectations, most of which most of us meet. Plan A is not a partnership. Plan A is about power. Power causes conflict. Collaboration brings people together. Plan A does not involve kids in solving the problems that affect their lives. Once again, why would we want to leave the kid out of the loop on that? Now, for this last downside, a school example, I'll give you a home example in a few minutes on Plan B. School example. Here's Plan A. Class, it's time to get to work on your social studies projects. I hope you quickly recognize that that was not Plan A. That was just the classroom teacher announcing an expectation. No plan yet. I'm not doing my social studies project, says one of the kids in the class. Now there's an unmet expectation. Now the teacher has three options, A, B, C. Regrettably, she's now in the heat of the moment on an expectation I later learned this kid hadn't met in 3 weeks. begging the question, why are we stuck in the heat of the moment yet again on an expectation this kid hasn't met in 3 weeks? She chose plan A. What'd she say next? I've decided you must. Well, there you have it. The prototypical adult first response to an unmet expectation, insisting harder, but also plan A number one. Well, I'm not. Well, then I've decided you need to get out of my class. Plan A number two. Fine. Now the kid's out in the hall. Teacher comes out to talk to him. This is a true story, by the way. Teacher says, what's your deal today? Kid says, I'm not talking to you. Teacher says, well, then I've decided you need to go talk to the assistant principal. Plan A number three. Fine. Now the kid's in the assistant principal's office. I've heard you were being disrespectful to your teacher. Whatever. Whatever. Now you're being disrespectful to me. I've decided that you are now suspended for 3 days. Plan A number four. And now the final point about the final downside of plan A. 4 plan A's later, do we yet know anything about why the kid is having difficulty getting started on the social studies project in the first place? We know nothing. And here's what I can promise you. Once we find out what's making it hard for the kid to get started on the social studies project, I promise you it's something a 3 day suspension won't address. Solutions arrived at through use of Plan A are not only unilateral, they are also uninformed. We miss out on boatloads of information by being so consumed with Plan A. All right, next slide. This might be the last slide of the night. I'll come back to this next time. Next slide, please. We're running a little late. There are 3 steps that are involved in solving a problem collaboratively. I promise to go into more detail next week, but the week after, the next time we meet. But you can watch video of this process in the same place on the Lives in the Balance website where you can see the 30-minute video of how to use the ASIP. There are 3 steps. This is true with kids. This is true with adults. 3 steps. The empathy step, the define it all concern step, and the invitation step in that order. What's the main ingredient of the empathy step? Information gathering. Gathering information from the kid about what's hard about meeting a particular expectation. I'm always telling caregivers, be prepared for surprises in the empathy step when you discover that what you thought was getting in the kid's way is not what's getting in the kid's way. Here's a home example. I was doing an interview on a podcast, and it was a father podcast, was interviewing me. And he was telling me about his 3-year-old daughter who was having difficulty brushing her teeth before going to bed at night. Now, first of all, it's significant that the kid is 3 years old because a lot of people don't think you can engage 3-year-olds in these 3 steps. They're wrong. But he was telling me he thought he already knew what was making it hard for his daughter to brush her teeth before going to bed at night. He was positive it was the taste of the toothpaste. So he's telling me 5 or 6 different flavors of toothpaste later. His daughter is still having difficulty brushing her teeth before going to bed at night. So he says to me, so I finally did plan B. I'm thinking, you finally did plan B? And people think plan B takes a lot of time. Look at how much time it took this guy to go through 5 or 6 different flavors of toothpaste. Anyways, the empathy step begins with the words, I've noticed that. And then the unsolved problem. This is why the wording is important. And then asking the kid, what's up? Here's what it sounded like. I've noticed you've been having difficulty brushing your teeth before going to bed at night. What's up? His 3-year-old daughter said, when you brush my teeth with the electric toothbrush, it gets water all over my face, and I hate getting water all over my face when you're brushing my teeth. I said to the father, well, now there's a concern that 5 or 6 different flavors of toothpaste would never address. The define it all concern step. This is where us adults are entering our concerns into consideration. The same concern that might previously have led you into plan A is now leading you into plan B. Same concern, completely different approach to getting it addressed. Here's what that sounds like. My concern is that if we don't brush your teeth before you go to bed at night, you could get cavities, and it kind of hurts to get cavities filled. And to tell you the truth, I'd rather not spend the money if I don't have to. 2 sets of concerns on the table. As I always say, no turning back now. The third step is the invitation. This is where kid and caregiver are collaborating on a solution, but a solution that needs to meet 2 criteria. It's got to be realistic. Both parties got to be able to do what they're agreeing to do. And even more important than that, the solution needs to be mutually satisfactory, meaning it addresses the concerns of both parties. Here's what I've been saying a lot lately, and it's not just my work with thousands of kids and their caregivers that bears me out on it, it's world history that bears me out on it. If a solution is not realistic and mutually satisfactory, I promise you, this problem is still unsolved. Guaranteed. The invitation step begins with the words, I wonder if there's a way. Now, the first thing to notice here is what a big difference there is between I wonder if there's a way and I've decided that. What are you wondering if there's a way to do? You're wondering if there's a way to address the concerns of both parties. Here's what it sounded like in this example. I wonder if there's a way for us to make sure your face doesn't get wet while I'm brushing your teeth with the electric toothbrush. That was the kid's concern. And also make sure you don't get cavities because it kind of hurts to get cavities filled, and I'd rather not spend the money if I don't have to. Believe it or not, believe it or not, you are then giving the kid the first crack at the solution. Not because it's the kid's job to come up with the solution, it's y'all's job to come up with the solution. Y'all are partners. If the kid doesn't have any ideas, I'm sure you will, but it's very good strategy to give the kid the first crack. You got any ideas? She did. They usually do. She said, could we wrap a towel around my face when you're brushing my teeth with the electric toothbrush? And then my face wouldn't get wet. And also I wouldn't get cavities. Who won? Both. Who lost? Nobody. Who's the authority figure? The father. And a whole lot more of an authority figure than he was being when he was busy ramming that toothbrush down his daughter's throat every night in the service of an admirable agenda. It's just that the way the problem was being solved, that wasn't so admirable. You will get much more on this next time we get together. But let me ask our hosts if there are any questions I can answer very quickly. This was a lot of information tonight before we call it a night.
Yes, there was a question in the chat about, I think it was who in the school team typically fills out the ASAP when you have, and I think you answered it right. Um,
It's a group process. Um, I don't like it when we arrive at tier 2 and often the people who are there waiting for us at tier 2 don't know the kid and don't know anything about the kid. I want the people who are working with the kid in the trenches in an ASAP meeting because they're the ones who know what expectations the kid is having difficulty meeting. And remember, we're not deciding in an ASAP meeting why the kid is having difficulty meeting an expectation. We're going to find that out in that first step of Plan B.
Thank you. There are two other ones. I don't know if you think you can answer them
Let's
quickly.
let's find out.
All right. So, can the ASAP 2024 process be effectively applied to a 23-year-old mildly autistic male who is struggling at home and work, currently not employed, or are other tactics recommended?
Yes, but in the same place that you'll find the ASIP on the Lives in the Balance website, and Jen, maybe we can make sure people get that link. It's the
Have it posted in there for
great.
you.
There's the ASIP A, which is the ASIP for adults. Um, Next question. I answered that one pretty quickly.
What happens if the child doesn't stick to the mutually agreed upon solution?
Ah, so well, often it's not just the child who has difficulty sticking with the solution, but it is true in real life as well as in Plan B that the first solution does not solve the problem durably. Next time we meet, I'll go through the different reasons that a solution might not stand the test of time. I'm just letting you know that that's one way in which Plan B imitates real life. The first solution doesn't always solve it, but the second usually does. So we might have to go back to Plan B to get some things sorted if the first solution doesn't get the job done.